I'm Miwa Messer. I'm the producer and host of Poured Over, and I have so been looking forward to this interview. I mean, I frequently say that on the show, but moderation, I'm telling you, moderation, this is a whiz bang bunch of fun. A little pointed, which I appreciate, very smart, very sharp, stuff we like around here. Elaine Castillo is the author of Moderation. You may know her from an essay collection called How to Read Now, the one with the bomb on the front. Yeah, that one. And also a novel called America is Not the Heart, which is a play on a novel by Carlos Bulosan, which is why I'm always looking at the title to make sure I'm saying your title properly and not just messing up his. But Elaine, I'm so happy to see you. This is going to be so fun.
Yay, I'm so happy to be here. And thank you for rescheduling because I was deathly ill with tour flu a couple weeks
That
ago.
is the worst. Seriously, you get home and you're just like,
I think
eyes
it's just
crossing.
touring after 40 is grim.
Oh, but this is the beauty of this is where I don't gripe about the tech. Is because you and I get to do this. And it was like we weren't dependent on being in the same room. I mean, yeah, it's
Exactly.
really fun to be on stage together or in the same room, whatever. But at the same time, like we still get to do this. And tech, you've written a novel about virtual reality, diaspora, and Vegas. And I'm sorry, I think Vegas was the part that really got me. I was like, okay, apparently I'm following Elaine to Vegas. And I love Girly. I love this narrator.
Oh,
And
thank
we're
you.
going to get into the whole thing, obviously, spoiler free. But I want to start
I
with
can.
Girly. You can do it. I promise you, you can do it. But Girly in Vegas, she leaves the Bay Area, she leaves Silicon Valley and Vegas. And having read the book, I'm pretty sure I know why you did that. But I want to talk about Vegas as setting because this book is a little dependent on Vegas.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, well, I mean, so much of the kind of pre-context of the book is that, yes, she and her family are from the Bay Area, much essentially like the community, the 90s community
Right.
that is in my first novel, America's Not the Heart,
Yep.
which is this kind of 90s tight-knit Filipino community.
Uh-huh.
And moderation takes place in the kind of atomic half-life of the American dream
Right.
exploding, essentially in the post-2008 crisis, which
Right.
very much happened to my family. So 2008 happened,
Okay.
people's lives essentially got decimated, and a lot of, like, I think over half of my family moved to Vegas. So by the time I was around, and
Okay.
people were already moving to Vegas beforehand because people
Yeah.
were buying these cheap
Mm-hmm.
homes in the desert that were being built because, the adjustable rate mortgage. So I started going to Vegas a lot since about the age of 15 or so. So it's been in my life a
Okay.
while because it
That's
was
good.
sort of this like, wow, we've all got second houses, third houses now. Are any of these houses paid for? Absolutely not. So I knew at some point that I wanted to write about Vegas and this kind of essentially sort of secondary migration that happens with
Mm-hmm.
the kind of Filipino American diaspora that I knew that happens in Vegas. And there's a lot, I think kind of similar to how I write about Silicon Valley. I think there's a lot of, we have these mainstream depictions of Vegas, which is like the Strip, the casinos, high
Yep.
rollers, Ocean's 11. And the Vegas I knew is Vegas of the blackjack dealers who have to go home at the end of the day, to the
Right.
suburbs, in the outskirts, in the desert, to the houses that aren't paid off, to the debt. So the kind of sort of upstairs, downstairs vision of Vegas, that kind of behind the scenes sort of back rooms of Vegas, is really the kind of portrayal of Vegas that I wanted to see in a novel. And it's sort of similar to how I write about Silicon Valley. I'm not writing about tech oligarchs. I'm writing
Right.
about the security guards and the nurses who are around that constellation or on the periphery of that.
And I love Girly's family. I love them. They're a delight. But you do layer in virtual reality. I mean, Girly's a moderator for a virtual reality experience. And part of me is laughing a little bit too, because you and I both know how much outsourcing has happened to the Philippines, right?
Absolutely.
It is a huge industry in that country, and a lot of American companies, use it. And
Yeah.
it is what it is. But the idea that Girly is in Vegas and she
Yes.
is one of the best moderators in the business. I love seeing that inverse. I love seeing that flip where it's just like, here we are. And the girl who's actually going to make sure that you have a great time doing this thing in
Mm.
this world
Yeah,
is
yeah.
tiny, tiny and fierce, and also not telling us her real name.
No, no. Well, why would she? She doesn't
I
know
know.
it. Yeah, I mean, I think the connection between virtual reality and Vegas is there also because Vegas is its own type of virtual reality. Like all of
Absolutely.
these kind of, and the theme of historical theme
Hmm.
parks is brought into the book also. Yeah, there's definitely, I think, a connection between the types of racialized labor that I grew up
Hmm.
with, like nurses, security guards. I saw a lot when I learned that, in my research for doing the book, that so many content moderators are Filipino,
Yeah.
and it's connected also to I mean, even the rehearsing of like the dismantling of democracy via Cambridge Analytica in the Philippines. All of this stuff
Hmm.
gets iterated
Right.
in the poorest corners of our world, like the
Right.
Philippines. So I think, connecting who does these kinds of affective labor, dirty work, that
Hmm.
sentinel work, sort of guard work, connecting security guard, nurse, moderator. I think all of that sort of became a kind of
Hmm.
constellation of labor. Because I think in my head, people were like, "Ooh, is this your tech novel?" And I was like, I mean, I knew I was going to write about tech, but I did think of it first as a novel about labor.
I don't think you can separate tech from people.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Tech is the product of people programming it, coding it, creating it, deciding that we need a thing to disrupt. I mean, if you read copy written by AI, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, chatbot, okay, thanks. I'm not saying that it isn't here. I'm not, that's, we could have 19
Yeah.
different conversations in the course of this conversation,
Yeah.
but I love the interplay of diaspora and tech. I'm going to take Vegas out of the equation for a second because it's going to make
Yeah.
me laugh too hard. But this idea that tech, all right, tech is the thing that unites diaspora, right? Like when we were, or at
Oh
least when
yeah.
I was really young, I remember like the blue airmail letters, right, from
Oh yeah.
family abroad. And now you can just be like, doot, 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 bing, here's a meme, bing, bing, bing,
Absolutely.
emoji. Like it's a really different experience. Or like you couldn't go home to see family except for every couple of kind of thing. And now it's like, you can jump on a video call and
Yeah.
it's in your pocket. Like you don't even need a laptop. So the idea that tech actually can't be separated from humans
Mm-hmm.
is kind of delightful to me.
Yeah.
It's not, because I'm also at that point too where I sort of grew up pre and post tech. Like my brother and
Yes.
I would fight over the phone.
Same.
There's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Same.
one phone in the kitchen, and we fought.
Yeah, landline generation, dial-up
Absolutely.
internet generation.
I
Absolutely.
mean, a plain paper fax was like high tech, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
now I'm walking around with a supercomputer in my pocket going, doo, doo, doo. And now I'm getting on the subway with my supercomputer. And it's a little sci fi, but
Mm,
again, you can't separate the tech from the
yeah,
people.
absolutely.
And Girly meets some very wild people. Because of the tech, Girly meets some folks where I'm just thinking about this one particular dude who comes via Hong Kong and has a
Oh,
little bit of a backstory, which,
oh.
okay, we are going to stay away from the backstory, right? You know the part I'm talking about. We're
Yes.
not going to give up that part of the backstory. Um, but it's built on a structure that is familiar to, shall we say, readers of Jane Austen, which until I was prepping for this interview, I was, shall we say, a very reluctant non finisher of novels by Jane Austen.
Amazing.
And you got me to finish Pride and Prejudice. And it was totally, listen, it was totally worth it in the context of the, I'm glad I read it. It turns out I think Darcy is less of a drip than I originally assumed he would be. I was kind of down with Lizzie Bennet anyway, so whatever. But I still like I have issues with the marriage plot. This is
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah, yeah.
this is a me thing. I understand all of the intellectual reasons for loving Jane Austen. I understand all of these things. I'm just not really one for the marriage plot.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well,
And
I need
listen,
you
go
to
get
read
married. Everyone,
Persuasion.
if that's what you want, go get married. That's cool. Whatever. I have an issue with the institution itself in that I
I,
don't particularly believe in it.
I think it's amazing that a book about virtual reality got you to read a Regency novel. I
Yes,
feel pretty proud about that.
honestly, and on top of it, not only that, I bought like the giant.
Oh my
It's all
God.
of her novels in one volume with an introduction by Karen Joy Fowler. It's this giant penguin paperback. And I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, I suppose I should just finally do it. And
Yeah.
so I made it through. Mansfield Park is next because a colleague said, "Eh,
Oh.
give that a whirl."
Okay, and then Persuasion.
And then I will
I'm
get to
always like, persuasion is for the earth signs. Persuasion is for the
okay.
eldest siblings.
then I really yeah. Hi, oldest daughter.
Oh, are we going to talk
Hi,
about being eldest siblings?
hi. Okay, so I think I can do Mansfield Park and then Persuasion, but then I might have to take a break. Like I that's
Oh
that's
yeah.
a lot. That's going from zero Jane Austen to half of Jane Austen
Oh
in
yeah,
what
yeah, yeah,
feels
yeah.
like
No.
60 seconds. It's
You have to
like
take. I told a friend of mine. I told her to read The Age of Innocence. She
mm,
absolutely did. She loved it, and then I was like, "Don't read The House of Mirth next. Like, you
mm,
will actually like lose faith in life. It
right,
will be
right.
like read The Custom of the Country because it's still grim because it's still Wharton, but it's funny at least. And she's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. She definitely read House of Mirth, and then I started
Yes,
text like, Elaine, I'm depressed.
but part of why I so enjoyed picking up Pride and Prejudice for this particular interview. I mean, there are other writers who've referenced it. I mean, I am sometimes I'm slow to come to things. Um, you have a really terrific essay in How to Read Now, where you bring up this concept of the unexpected reader. Right. And honestly, my parents were trying to get me to read Jane Austen when I was 11. And I was like, please stop trying to shove this up my nose. I'm really not interested. Like, I'm really not get like I'm fine with, you know, Little House on the Prairie and like patting like I just like Jane Austen, really? Like what?
Hmm.
And then I romp off into the library and discover things like Maxine Hong Kingston and James Baldwin and Toni Morrison. I'm like, bye. I'm good now. Thanks. Joan Didion. Um, but this idea of all of us sort of building off of what came before,
Mm,
right? And that some might think of an unexpected reader as, well, you picking up
mm,
Pride and Prejudice.
mm.
And part of me is kind of like, and you know why I'm saying, Um, and part of me is like, well, aren't we all unexpected readers, right? Like,
Mm,
none of this was written with any of us in mind.
yeah.
And any reader brings their own experience to what they're doing. I mean, part of the fun for me for moderation was like, I understand exactly what's happening here and I know exactly what the reference is. And now I'm going to go chase the primary source because apparently that's what I do. And I'm enjoying it. And I'm just going, okay, I'm doing the thing. But I want to talk about your experience of, let's call it canon for want of a better word, right?
Mm,
Like Austen is canon. And a lot of what you've done in this book is sort of a play on the marriage plot. It's a
yeah.
play not just on Pride and Prejudice, but the whole ethos of the thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think, thinking about that essay, which has been a while now since I've
Yeah.
written, but I think, I think I was thinking about how much of a gift it was to have been an unexpected reader, to have
hmm
not been someone whose life and history and context would have been the expected readership of, say, I don't know, sort of Greek myth or
Right.
yeah, Jane Austen or the books that I loved growing up,
hmm
and how I wish that more people sort of consider themselves unexpected readers.
hmm
I think it was in the context of the way people approach the work of writers of color, which is,
Yeah.
yeah,
hmm
and the way people approach those works ethnographically without
hmm
surrendering themselves to that same sort of experience of being an interloper, that same experience of being vulnerable to a book's world, of being open and curious to a book's world, as opposed to, waiting for an author to kind of lead you through like on a safari guide. But I think, for me, thinking about sort of Jane Austen. I mean, I think in that essay I was talking a little bit about that. Well, I mean, it was kind of, I mean, to quote the kind of, like quote unquote woke fervor around the sort of resistance to contextualizing her work historically, like within
hmm
kind of colonial context. And of course, if you read Austen, you know that all of the socio-political dimension of her work is completely inextricable from every single plot point. I think the reasons why when I started joking about this book as a kind of take on sort of Regency romance meets sci-fi. It's also because, the idea of our interpersonal relationships being absolutely influenced by our class
hmm
material context, questions of labor, questions of politics, questions of
hmm
gender, questions of, what rights, the unevenness of our rights within romantic and sexual
hmm
relationships. That's Austen in the 1800s, and that's us now. So
Right.
the aliveness of how politics works through our sensual material
hmm
lives has not gone away. But I think it's also, I'm glad that you think that I'm playing with that, the marriage plot and because, all of these tropes and stuff, as someone who is playing with genre, both sort of romance and sci-fi, like I want to think about both what is delicious about these tropes and also, why is it meaningful to us also when we
Right.
defy those tropes? Something like the marriage plot, which I mean, I agree with you, but, to think about that within the context of, for example, women of color whose sort of marital rights or nuclear family rights have been have been sort of have had been intervened with via sort of like racial sort of
Yeah.
miscegenation laws, et cetera. So how can a marriage plot, be political in other ways? Or, and I think, I mean, some of it is even down to, who gets to be at the core of a love story. I
Hmm.
think because for me, this kind of, and I think it's a kind of binary that a lot of people bring up, which is like there's grim, dark, serious politics, history, war on one side, and sort of romance, domestic fiction, comedy, light fluff on the other side. And obviously, I wrote a book that's about a communist sort of, rebel fighter in my first novel. So I'm not a stranger to writing about
Hmm.
war, but I just think that idea that these things are separate from each other upholds an entirely different agenda because, that love should be involved with our, I think any politics of resistance or any politics of transformation or revolution that doesn't also include a thinking about the ethics and, practice of love is not one that I'm interested in. Is not one that has anything to say to me about a world that's actually worth living in. So I think, thinking about, well, why can't one of the most exploited laborers in our modern world
Hmm.
also be a romance heroine? Like it can't all be sort of like middle class interns for lifestyle magazines or whatever, the kind of main. And I've loved many of those. Well, I would say my partner has loved many of those rom-coms. My partner is the real sort of rom-com person in our family and friend group. But just thinking about who really gets to be ultimately loved, I think is also sort of one of the questions I was asking because when I was on UK tour a few
Hmm.
weeks ago, and the question got brought up and sort of like kind of the genderedness of romance as a genre, and I was like,
Hmm.
well, I mean, ultimately, under patriarchy, romance is a sci-fi genre because you're like imagining a world in which women are loved, like institutionally, systemically. That's not really something my federal government is telling me as it's dismantling all of my rights.
I'm also kind of laughing, to be honest, because romance is not necessarily. I'm happy to hear people talk about romance. I think there's some really interesting writers doing
Yeah,
a lot of very smart, fun, zippy things. It's just not the first
oh, it's
thing I
not my
reach
genre.
for.
It's not my
And
genre either.
yeah, but it delights me when I see people just really engaging with storyline. I get excited when I see people talking about the books that make their hearts go swing, right? Like
Yeah,
it just makes me happy.
yeah.
But the idea that I got really invested in this particular, and yeah, maybe I needed a little bit of the tech to buy in. I definitely needed the family story to buy in, but I stayed. Right? Like I'm not your typical romance reader, but you're
Yeah,
doing
same.
like two or three different things with this narrative, right? Like we've got the whole class thing,
Mm,
diaspora story that, well, I mean, I'm not sure I've quite read this diaspora story before, which
mm.
I appreciate. And
Oh,
then on top of it, we've got a dude who swans into Gurley's life, and I'm like, he's not terrible. He's not a drip. He's not a drip. And I was like, wait a minute, what is happening here? I'm really, I was very satisfied by a couple of different beats where he was not a drip. And I was like, huh, I'm super invested in this. And I'm
yeah.
not, again, I delighted that Jane Austen got rediscovered in the 1800s because she'd fallen out of favor and had not
Mm,
been a thing and had not seen success initially and then became a thing. And so, yay, hurrah. I mean, the same thing had happened to Virginia Woolf,
right. Yeah.
right?
Right.
Like when you think of all of these writers who've become part of canon, I guess Dickens never fell out of favor because the dude was writing a page a day for like,
Right.
I mean, when you get paid by the word, now I understand, but
Yeah.
I'm good, thanks. And I think Trollope, was he in the post office like his entire writing career? Was he one of those?
First of all, I'm glad that you were invested. I mean, I'm
Totally
right.
invested.
I'm completely right with you. I'm as not someone who, I mean, it's a joke amongst my friend group that it's my partner who's the
Uh,
real like romance
yeah.
rom-com devotee, and everyone wants to know his opinion on like the latest. They're like, what does he think about the materialists? Or what does he think about Baby Girl? I have to like tell several different group
Uh,
chats. But for me, yeah, I think I'm someone who has been more I'm like, I want to read books about machinations of power or
I mean, I do. Honestly,
yeah.
that's I'm much more kind of I'm more a little more curious about the stuff that shall we say is a little messier sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that this is in that way, this is a love story written by someone who doesn't necessarily. I guess it's not entirely true. My first novel had a love story in it, but maybe that's the distinction is that I'm not that interested. I used to call myself an anti-romantic person, but I was like, I'm not interested. But as someone who is, however, completely invested in
Mm,
love and the ethic of love and the
mm.
connection between people and the world build, like love is a practice of world building, really.
It is. It is absolutely. That is probably the best stuff because I usually say love is an action, right? Like it's a
Hmm.
muscle. Like you have to work it. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily easy. Like we walk around thinking, oh, it's all puppies and kittens and hearts, and sometimes it's
Yeah.
a little harder than, hey, look at that puppy. Can I scratch you behind the ears?
I mean, if everything in life was that.
I, it's character building, right?
Yeah.
It's character building, but I do when I'm watching Girly sort of move through the world, because she's got some very definite ideas about
Yeah.
who she is and who she
Mm.
wants to be, but she's also not necessarily invested in playing along with other people's expectations of her.
Mm.
So she's walking that line, which is always fun in fiction, right? Where I'm like, are you gonna do the thing? Are you gonna say the thing? Are you gonna do okay? And it's nice to be surprised by a character. And I'm
Oh.
wondering if she surprised you. I mean, are you someone who just sits down and goes, or do you know where you're going as you sit down to start a novel?
I always think I know where I'm going, and usually I get
Hmm.
surprised. Well, I did say at some point, I think in an interview or when talking about this book, that I do think this book is about two people who are very, very sure of themselves and who they are and the genre, the story of their
Yeah,
life or whatever was told it, and are totally wrong. Like I
yeah.
love writing people who are really sure and really wrong. The kind of drama of that. It's probably because it's true of my own life as someone who is sort of like a very sure, confident in being right Virgo.
Hmm.
I think there's an element of that. But I think, with sometimes with I think at some point once I was talking about the book and I was like, it's probably my in a way least autobiographical book, but most
Yeah,
personal.
I get that.
In that,
Yeah, I
in
get
that
that.
obviously I'm not a content moderator, but there's a way in which Girly is sort of alternate universe me. Like me if I had been less brave in my life, the kind of
Hmm.
and also me if I hadn't left the Bay Area in
Hmm.
2009. Like in
Right,
2009, I moved to London. In
right.
2009, Girly moves to Las Vegas.
Hmm.
So, I think there was a sense of tracing out who this person might have been and how, what kind of carapace she would have created around herself and how she would have hardened and really thinking about all of, the kind of defenses that she would have built up with, her humor and with her way of seeing the world and the fact that she's overeducated, but, post 2007, what does that matter?
Hmm.
and and thinking about how she would move through the world as someone who has had to build this carapace around herself, and then crucially, someone who would have to see that carapace crack.
But also really good at what she does and still invisible.
Yes, yeah. I did want to write
And I
about
think
someone who
that
was hyper competent. Yeah.
yeah, the invisibility thing I think is still really important. I feel like, we've got that outsider narrative down, right? Like, and
Mm.
Girly doesn't see herself as an outsider at all. She
Oh no.
really, my experience of her is more like, yeah, I'm doing a thing, I'm living my life, but she doesn't, like, she's aware of her family. You have this great line of something like, eight different families and eight credit cards and still the house wasn't
Yeah.
paid for or something like that, the way you
Yeah.
describe it. But she's kind of like, well, these are my people, this is my family, this is how we're living, and I'm in and out of the outside world, but I'm of it when I'm there. When I'm home with my family, I'm home with my family. I may not like all of the things they do, but I'm home with my family.
Yeah.
And then when I'm at the office, I'm this person, and you
Yeah.
get this piece of
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, she is a hyper compartmentalized
me.
person, and also someone who I think, I mean, because this book takes place in the near future, so it's,
Right.
sort of slightly further out from where we are now. It's also someone who, she's gone through the kind of sort of liberal education of, this, civil rights movements, identity
Hmm.
politics. So she's aware of all the kind of, she's sort of hyper politically aware of all the kind of social, political, material sort of ways in which you can interpret her character as a kind of exploited person of,
Hmm.
the anonymous underclass of tech. It's just that she doesn't allow that identity
Right.
to stick to her in any way. I mean, she does steadfastly is like, yeah, I'm a person.
Hmm.
And I think she does have a kind of wry detachment from the kind of probably what she would think of as the kind of sentimental kind of sob stories that could be created around her life. Also because she's absolutely running away from having to emotionally confront the real weight
Yeah.
of the historical context that is her life at that time. So I think so yes, she's someone who has those defenses around her, and I'm glad that you said that she's good at what she does because that was also important. Like I
Hmm.
didn't, uh, not that I don't like this sort of archetype, but the kind of
Hmm.
messy girl in fiction.
I'm
I was
so
like,
over
yeah,
it. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
I was
I'm
like,
so
we.
over it.
I mean, I was joking to someone. I was like, "We've had too much youngest daughter fiction. We need eldest daughter fiction. Like, we get it. I mean, joking to like a friend of mine who is a
Yeah.
youngest daughter. I was like, we get it. Y'all are messy. We're the ones cleaning up after you. Like, I was joking because I've only recently watched Fleabag, the show, which I really
Okay.
liked, and I was like, we need Claire's show, the sister who's like
Yeah.
very straight
Yeah.
edge.
Yeah. Yeah. I am. I also feel like you're pulling from film a little bit, but my film references don't
A
run
lot,
super
yeah.
deep. But uh, I will just own it. If Jason Statham has been in it, I have seen it probably multiple times. Sorry. I
Amazing.
mean,
I love
I
this.
John Wick movie. I
Well, I
don't.
mean, Terminator 2 is one of the epigraphs of the
It
novel, so.
yes, I and this is why we're coming back. But I think there's other stuff happening too. Like, I mean, honestly, Netflix thinks I'm like a 13-year-old boy,
Hmm.
but and that's fine. I mean, I've seen multiple Fast and the Furiouses, and I will own it too. I did stop,
Oh
like
yeah.
legitimately. I think I did
But
stop when they sent a Pinto into space or whatever it was. Anyway, with a balloon.
yeah, yeah. It's an Asian American cultural
I,
touchstone.
right? You got to represent. But
It is.
I do want to talk about
Yeah.
cinematic influences for a second because there is some narrative flow
Absolutely.
where there are some set pieces in the book. Are
Yes.
also some moments where the story flow just makes me think, oh, someone's been watching a lot of film. And I just want to talk about those influences
Mm.
for a second because again, I just admitted to having, well, very specific kind of taste in my screen time.
Good taste. Listen, I think I'm here for an action film. Obviously, I'm
Right.
a Terminator. I'm someone whose
Exactly.
emotional inner world was made by Terminator 2, Star Trek, all of that.
Hmm.
So yeah, no, there was a really big cinematic, I think, influence. Probably even I think maybe even more than literary, just because I knew the kind of subject matter I was writing about, because I knew that there was a kind of Austen, William Gibson
Hmm.
sort of easy reference to make there. I actually avoided reading both of those while I was writing. I mean, I
Yep.
had, my first William Gibson, I probably was Aidaru, which I read in when I was in middle school. My dad bought
Hmm.
it at a Long's drugstore back when those still
Oh,
existed.
wow. Okay, so
So I
mass market, like really mass market.
can you imagine buying William Gibson at the drugstore? It's like so, and I still have that copy.
Yeah.
And I was rereading it recently because I finally have let myself, and it's literally about a rock star who wants to marry a virtual reality idol. I was like,
Hmm.
I wonder if this went into my brain. So I think because I was staying away from some of those more obvious references that I knew would subconsciously get into the book
Right.
anyway, I watched more film, and I think also because I knew that it's a book about virtual reality. It's such a visual sort
Yeah,
of
exactly.
landscape, a visual kind of world that I'm writing about, and I'm also drawing on video games, which is such visual
Hmm.
storytelling, and there are sort of video games I reference in it. I think that it's that reason why I think, the obviously Terminator 2 is one of the references of the book. I think it's also in my first novel. The Thomas Crown Affair, the
Yep.
1999 version, I think
Yep.
was a big sort of reference or thought. It's like one of my comfort films. I
Hmm.
think and also a lot of the kind of, I think, like classic love stories, especially in Asian films, or like In the
Hmm.
Mood for Love, Park
Love
Chan-wook's
that.
decision to.
Yeah. Okay. I take
Oh,
it back. That movie I do love.
yeah, I mean,
How
come
can you
on.
not
And
love
then
Wong Kar-wai? Like you,
Oh my
it's
gosh. I
not
mean,
possible.
my personal Wong Kar-wai is Happy Together. That's the film that really.
Yeah. Okay. I
and
get
I
all of it.
and oh, it's just, and I think that kind of language of romance and yearning that I got through films like that. But then also, in the book they talk about Kurosawa, and she mentions that Redbeard is her favorite,
Hmm.
and it's also my favorite. And
Yeah.
I did realize recently that I think all of my books have the figure of like a revolutionary doctor.
Hmm.
And I realized that when I realized the influence of Redbeard in.
Hmm.
And this didn't influence it because I watched it after. I'm pretty sure, of course, like what is time now? But I remember I watched Sancho the Bailiff recently, which is
Okay.
Kenji
Yeah.
music. Oh, and it's so, so good. And just, what everything that it says about sort of repair and justice and what we do when we finally come into power if we have experienced depression is just so. And there, I mean, our resonances with that. So yes, I think there's a rhythm of how um filmic pacing
Hmm.
was influenced the novel. I think also because with this novel, I was really consciously like I did not want to write another meandering book. Essentially, I think with my first novel, I was like, "There's no such thing as a side character. If someone comes onto the page, you're gonna
Right.
know everything their grandma did." Like I couldn't, it was like
But
digression after digression and chapter.
it is, but it is also it's a different world, it's a different reading experience,
Absolutely,
and it is in conversation with Boulassan's America
oh,
is the
absolutely,
heart.
absolutely.
And the idea too that, Boulassan was doing, wait, wasn't he writing in the 30s? Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, and if you haven't read America is the Heart,
It
which
is
is
the
the
heart.
Boulassan novel that we're both referencing, it's kind of a trip
Oh yeah.
because he's running on parallel tracks to John Steinbeck.
Absolutely. Yeah, 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 yeah.
And, wait, he was based in San Francisco, right? Boulassan?
He was in, I mean, at some point he's in, there, it's like the whole West
Oh,
Coast,
he's
kind of
one of the West
mining
Coast, like
industries,
Seattle
like
on the way
basically from
down.
Alaska, Seattle, all the way down. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Central
because
Valley as well as at some
I
point.
always just think of him as more Northern California than
Yes,
Southern
yeah, yeah. I
California.
think we claim him.
Yeah, no, I would. Okay, fine. I guess we get John Fonte. So. Um, but he is a writer that was not fashionable for a really long time,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
sort
yeah,
of the idea that you're just like, I'm going to write this book anyway. I'm going to be in conversation, and if you get the inside track, that's cool, and
yeah.
if you don't, still, I mean, it's a fun book. Yes, it's meandering in a way that moderation is not. But I love the idea that we can always be in conversation that's something that came before, even if
Yeah.
someone else might not immediately get the reference. I mean, Pride and Prejudice has become enough of a thing, right? Where even I could understand. I mean, beyond because I
Repressed people looking at each other.
I had not seen the jacket yet, so I had
Oh,
not yet seen the jacket, which is
yeah.
fabulous.
Oh, I can tell the
Um,
story about the jacket.
Oh, I do want to hear that story. But at the same time, I'm reading, and it's literally just where I have no packaging. I have your name. I have the title. I'm reading. It's great. I'm having a good time. And I'm like, oh, there's some Jane Austen happening here. Like, I mean, but it's not, it's very specifically Jane Austen. Now, can I tell you which of the books? No, but I know it's a Jane Austen thing that's
You know
happening. I'm
those
like,
tropes, they're in the kind of
okay.
culture. We've all metabolized them. So
Right? It's just in the air. But do
yeah.
tell the story about the jacket because that jacket is good.
Oh, it is incredibly good. So they were at some point. My editor was like, "Well, what are you thinking for the cover?" And I turned in this paint, and I was like, "This painting, which is by Vittorio Reggianini, called L'Ammirazione." I
Mm-hmm.
was like, "I kind of want this, but glitchy, like something like that."
Mm-hmm.
And Lynn Buckley, amazing, amazing designer at
Mm-hmm.
Penguin, basically came back with this exact cover, and it was like the shortest meeting in Viking history.
That's
We were like,
wild.
no notes. That's exact that you understood the assignment. But the interesting thing about this
Mm-hmm.
painting is that obviously it looks like it's about, he was part of the kind of silks and satins sort of costume painters, and it looks like it's about the Regency era, but actually he's born quite a bit later, and
Uh-huh.
he's living at a time of like political upheaval and war in Italy. So he's painting these incredibly romantic scenes, but he dies in 1938. So he sees when
Oh.
Italy turns to fascism. So that sort of play
Okay.
on kind of historical cosplay underneath the kind of rise of fascism, there are, not to spoil things, but there are themes with how the kind of virtual reality world in Playground or in Moderation works.
Well, and I think too, again, books are context, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you want to read history, cool. But
Yes.
if you want sort of something slightly unexpected, and I think that
Mm.
was part of it for me reading Moderation is, I mean, obviously I knew the earlier work, right? I knew your essays, I knew the first novel.
Oh.
And so I was like, of course I'm going to read this. But I
Oh.
didn't know quite what I was getting into. And
I love that.
I will own that completely. I'm like, of course I'll start reading. And then I meet Girly and I'm like, okay, who are you? And who are these maniacs she has some colleagues that I'm just
Oh,
like, okay, I
she has
recognize
some
I
fun.
there's a little bit of The Office happening. Let's put it that
Yeah,
way. Where I'm like,
yeah, absolutely. There's definitely some
okay,
Michael Scotts in there.
okay, okay. And then we meet this dude who is, Darcy adjacent and not a drip. And I'm kind of like,
Mm.
huh, all right, I'm gonna keep going. And we get our cousins and we get our aunties and we get this
Mm.
world and we get this woman who is making decisions really for herself when she's coming out of a culture where you're not really supposed to do that if you're a girl.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's part of the fun of watching Girly be like, nope, doing my thing, thanks.
yeah, yeah.
But again, like you think you know where you're going as you sit down to write this, but how much did it change from your sort of original vision of the thing? How much did she change from your original version?
I mean, I knew that there was going to be a genre shift. I knew that
Okay.
I knew that I was going. I mean, someone said to me recently, like, you really like to open your books with a punch in the face, huh? Because like the
Yeah,
first
you
chapter
kind of
is always pretty
do. You
intense.
kind of do.
And then like because the first chapter when I read from it, I always have to give a content warning because it
Yeah,
does
yeah.
include some scenes of quite graphic violence. But then you to go from that chapter to then and now you're in a Jane Austen Regency romance. I mean, I do think that's just how my brain
Hmm.
works. I do I think jump genres. I mean, but if you read Gibson, there's like always romance in a Gibson novel. So I think there was I knew that there would be a shift in
Hmm.
the novel. And I think maybe it was also something about the fact that, if you'd asked me when I was 15,
Hmm.
and a kind of Greek myth sort of Gibson sort of nerd, like, are you
Yeah.
going to write a novel about three generations of Filipino immigrant women? I'd be like, no, never. That's not
Right.
me. So the
Right.
fact that I did, and love, and I'm really proud of that book, I did always feel like, yeah, but I do also, there's a genre aspect to the way I think about the world. So I think there was always a knowledge, a sense that I wanted to write a sharper book and also a book that played with the genres that I grew up with.
Which I totally get. I also really do. I'm also thinking of Mohsin Hamid's novel Exit West.
All right,
Have you
yeah.
read that? Okay.
I think I have read
Okay.
that. Yes.
But basically wormholes.
Yes, right. Yes.
It's refugees and wormholes. And it works very much like Narnia.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And, less Turkish delight, but,
Yeah. Yeah,
basic
yeah, yeah.
idea. And I love the idea that we can take these sort of storytelling conventions and change the way we tell stories of diaspora and immigration and whatever you want to call it, migration, right?
Yeah.
Because for a long time it sort of felt like there was a very static story that you were told, and everyone becomes a great success and da, da,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
everyone ends up being alone and making bad choices.
Yeah.
And I feel like moderation is a bigger canvas,
Oh, thank
like a
you.
much bigger canvas where even if diaspora is not part of your story or your family's story, there is a lot to hold on to
Oh.
in Girly's story, and not just the romance parts, people, though that's
No,
fun.
this is for eldest siblings everywhere.
Yeah, right? Like, seriously, if you're the oldest in your family, yes. Um, Not that we're giving too much away there, but I appreciate that we're moving pieces around in a different way,
Mm.
and especially in this moment, right? Like, shouldn't we be able to do both, right? Can't you have romance and a little action and some like diabolic plotting and some power struggle? Like, why can't we have all of the things, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think I think that was kind of one of the reasons. It's funny, I was recently teaching, or I was doing a craft talk, and I was talking about this Brazilian theater practitioner that I had started reading, Augusto Boal, and he wrote
Mm,
a book called Theater of the Oppressed.
okay.
He was imprisoned under the Brazilian dictatorship and lived in exile for some years. And he wrote this really, Theater of the Oppressed, it basically says, I mean, the theory is really provocative. It's basically like that Greek tragedy is a tool of state oppression. But basically, what he's
Oh,
saying,
whoa. Okay, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. What?
well, for someone who was an ex-classicist who thought she was going to be like the Filipina Anne Carson, this was quite
Right.
shocking to read. But his whole sort of thing is the kind of narrative structure that we've all inherited, which is to say, like rising action,
Yeah.
catharsis, sort of
Yeah.
falling action, sort of resolution, is one that is predicated on like a character who has a particular, flaw, that like
Yeah.
hamartia in Greek, that is in contravention to society that then needs to be purified and taken out.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, well, he identifies that as like part of this kind of fascist control of how, a kind of narrative control of how, the audience then learns how to behave within society. And he's like, well, if we want to make art that wants to preserve the status quo, then tragedy is great. But if for those of us who want to transform our society, we're going to have to imagine a different poetics. And
I
that
really
did
love that.
go
I'm sorry.
my
I'm just going to
head.
sit here for 2 seconds and just sort
Yes.
of kind of roll that around in my brain. No, I love the idea of that. It runs sort of similarly to my feelings about nostalgia, where I'm just like,
Absolutely.
nostalgia is not your friend.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Nostalgia, uh, nostalgia, like people should be examining their need for nostalgia,
Absolutely.
to
Well,
be
so much of
perfect.
the book and the virtual reality site is essentially playing on and
Uh-huh.
oh, people's nostalgia. Spoiler alert. You can tell if I'm going too much into it. But it's exactly that, when you were asking me about did anything surprise me,
Yeah.
I think I did know going into it that I wasn't going to write a tragic ending.
Yeah.
That I wanted to
And
think
that was
about.
delightful. I have to say, because
Oh,
I had a moment of
oh yeah.
And I don't need a happy ending. I need an ending that feels organic.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
need it to be the
Yeah,
thing,
I mean, I
right?
love Wharton, so I'm not,
Yeah,
against
I
like,
mean,
that.
listen, the ending needs to be what the ending needs to be.
Yes, yeah.
And in this particular case, I was pleasantly surprised
Oh,
in a way where I was like, huh, okay, I buy this. I totally buy it. Because I honestly, I just didn't know. I mean, and you know why I'm saying that, but I
yes,
was
yeah,
just
yeah,
like, oh, okay, I'm
yeah.
good.
Well, I think because I think, but I think, when I was teaching it, I could see that some of the students were getting sort of uncomfortable and they were like, well, we've been kind of told all our lives that happy endings are pat. And like, how do I do that? And I was like, well, saying someone has gone through terrible shit and it will always shit and everything is terrible forever is also pat.
Yeah.
There's a way of writing tragic ending that's also pat. The kind of idea of a happy ending being in and of itself cliche. I mean, for you to do the world building and the storytelling that makes us understand why politically, narratively, materially, emotionally,
Yeah.
this ending matters to the characters within it. That's, I think, what is most.
I think there's a really grand sense of play to moderation.
Oh, yay.
Um,
Yes, I hope
there
that.
is, I mean, yeah, there's some moments where you're like, "Ooh, that's not good." And when I
Yeah.
say that's not good, it's not good for a character in the book.
Yeah, there's some grim bits. It's
Yeah,
still me.
there are some moments where you're like, "Oh, I understand, but ew."
Yeah.
Um, Especially there are a couple of moments moderating too, where
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
okay, and
Absolutely.
again, completely organic, makes sense to the story, but makes you sit up and pay attention, right,
Yes,
in a
yeah.
different way. But the idea that Girly can have this life that she's imagined,
Hmm.
and then she finds that there are people kind of going, and she's like, well, wait a minute, that's your
Hmm.
version.
Yeah,
I'm gonna scoot over here for a second. I found her. delightful. I
Oh.
I would like more girly in my life, and I'm not sure you can actually do a sequel, so that's not what I'm asking for. I'm just saying that
Sometimes
or
I think about it, but
well, no, I know, but I think that
no, yeah, that world is contained. I mean, I was joking to a friend, I was like, I
mhm.
could give you 100 pages on what happens in the 1 hour after the book ends.
No, no,
But
which and I absolutely believe that you could do that, but I don't think any of us
no,
need
no, you
it.
don't.
And but at the same time, I would love to see like, when I was younger, certainly I was like, yeah, down with the messy girl stories all the time. Great.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Mary Gateskill. Mm. But there does kind of come a point in your reading life where you're like, I don't know. Can we have just a different version
Mm,
of the coming of age? And I would just like a little
yeah.
diversity
Well,
in
and I think, I think I didn't want to
experience.
shy away from the fact that like much of tech and the labor of tech is frankly dystopian. But just because
Hmm.
I'm writing about the dystopian nature of tech, but I'm not writing a tech dystopia.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know,
Like
I
I
get
think
that.
if you want tech dystopia, like just open any legacy media because it will give you an article that's about tech dystopia.
Well, but also, I mean, I would read about, these sort of campuses in Silicon Valley where it's like, well, you can get all of your meals and your laundry and everything else. And I'm like, so when do you leave?
Yeah,
Like you
exactly.
actually have, and if you're going to be creative, right, in this particular piece of your life, you kind of have to leave
Hmm.
and touch grass, whatever you want to call it. But like, you kind of have to leave. Like,
Mm,
go see a movie, go do a thing, go do like, yes, all of the conveniences are here, yay, but like, what are the conveniences actually bringing you?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
sometimes I need to actually walk through the grocery store and figure out, because I'm very bad at making grocery lists. So I end up doing that thing where I just wander and go, I think I need that.
Oh
And
gosh.
sometimes you end up with like 3 bottles of dishwasher detergent. You're like, oops. Whatever, dish soap, if you're me. But I think watching how she works with the tech
Mm,
and how she balances that with the humans
mm,
is a nice change.
yeah.
It's not what was the terrible device in Terminator? Sorry, why am I blanking on it?
Oh,
It's
Skynet?
Skynet, thank you. It's not it's not like Skynet is hunting her down in the building, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but I think watching people navigate their own relationships with tech and where it
Mm,
fits. Like, I'm not a Luddite by any stretch of the
yeah.
imagination. Are there times where I may forget to check my phone for a little? Sure, sure.
Yeah.
But do I also notice that, like, if I'm standing online waiting and I'm stuck, I might play with my phone?
Mm-hmm,
It's not
hmm.
the best habit to have. Is it the worst habit I have? No, but I could do it
Yeah,
less.
yeah, yeah.
And I didn't, I'm thinking about adolescents too who've grown up on social media. I'm like,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
very happy it was not around when I was that
Oh yeah,
age.
my God. Yeah, no, I feel lucky that I came up in the era of sort of GeoCities and AOL and Angel Fire websites. That was my internet. And like the late 90s internet, we all kind of thought it was a utopia. It's like the information highway
Hmm.
where everything felt, and for people who feel alienated in their own life, the internet at that era did seem utopian
Right.
because you could connect with people, like-minded people in a way. And obviously, I was a 13-year-old girl, so there's also danger, very
Yeah,
real
there's so
danger that
much
I
to think there.
encountered in chat rooms in the 90s. But at the same
So
time, I think
much
that's
to
why I don't want to write a tech dystopia, is because, as you
think.
say, I'm interested in how people connect to each other, eh, either both through and in defiance of the tech that
Hmm.
informs and deforms their lives.
Defiance is a fun word.
Mm.
Defiance actually is not a word I have used recently. And I'm like, oh, we should bring that back.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We should
We
bring that
should
back.
bring that back. This seems
It
like a
is, yes.
good moment for define. Oh,
Spoiler alert also.
ah, ah. Have you started the next thing? Do you know what the next thing is going to be?
I have been I've been thinking about the next
Okay.
thing. I'm kind of torn between two sort of pole genre shifts. I think I'm probably going to lean more sci. It's just so fun to do
Hmm.
sci-fi and genre. The other pole is a big historical romp. But as I always think I'm thinking juggling two
Mm.
or three different ideas, and then I find that they all sort of actually are the same thing. So maybe that's what I'll discover. But as you said, it's a big, it feels like a bigger canvas. I'm moved that you said that, so I'm taking that with
It
me today.
it is
But
a very cool. I am, yeah. I mean, I can't wait for people to pick up moderation. I think it's really special and weird in a good way, and just it's the kind of book where you kind of it's entertaining, and then you realize that maybe you're not the same person you
oh
were
God,
when you finish reading it, and you're like, oh, huh. Girly poked me and got me to
oh
think a little differently.
oh my.
I don't always get to say that. That's kind of fun.
Well, I don't always get to hear that. That's very fun.
All right, listen. We promised we would do a spoiler-free conversation, and you and I we got too close to the edge on a couple of things. So what I am going to say is someday you and I are going to do a Didion episode on the show. We're going to figure out how to do the Didion episode. I don't know when, but at some point we're going to do this. But Elaine
I'm
Castillo, it
there
was
anytime.
so good to have this conversation with you. It was a treat. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. This was the absolute best. This is the highlight of my day.
Thank you for listening. Poured Over is a Barnes & Noble production. To help other readers find us, please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.